All right, good afternoon. The April 29, 2025 regular meeting of the Fairfax County School Board Governance Committee will now come to order. Dr. Anderson has submitted a written request to attend this afternoon's meeting virtually due to a personal conflict, as she has a family emergency and is attending this afternoon's meeting from Annandale, Virginia. All those in favor of approving Dr. Anderson's request? Ms. Sizemore-Heiser, Ms. Marin, myself, that's unanimous. It's approved. Dr. Anderson, can you check your mic?
Good afternoon, all.
Good afternoon. We can hear you. Thank you.
Ms. Dixit's absent today.
Okay. We will now vote to approve the minutes of the March 18, 2025 and April 1, 2025 meeting of the Governance Committee. Thank you. All right, seconded by Ms. Marin.
And just to clarify, that motion is with leave for the clerk to make grammatical and formatting changes.
Okay, perfect. So the motion on the table is that the Governance Committee approve the minutes from March 18, 2025 and April 1, 2025 with leave for the clerk to make grammatical and formatting edits. All those in favor? Ms. Sizemore-Heiser, Ms. Marin, myself, and Dr. Anderson? Yes, I think so. That's all four of us. All right, motion passes. All right, we're going to start with policy 1.03, policy 2232, student attendance at school. I call on Dr. Reed for item 1.03, student attendance at school.
Thank you, Ms. Lady. The memo is fairly short. Essentially, the changes to this policy, including adding a philosophy section, outlining the definition of chronic absenteeism, and the inclusion of both excused and unexcused absences. So additionally, the title for section 7 has changed the word procedures to policy. And it's recommended that the proposal under section 7 and the steps included in the proposal be moved to the regulation. And then additionally, VSBA policies, compulsory attendance options, and JED student absences are attached. So it's ready for your review.
Anyone like to comment on the policy?
I have my hand up, Miss Lady.
Okay, Dr. Anderson.
Sorry, I was just trying to get my camera on. Thank you for this information. Just a couple of things. And just generally, I mention this all of the time. I'd like for us to get to some sort of consensus as to whether or not we're going to be including parents, guardians, caregivers. So I wanted to raise that. But more substantially, under philosophy, I wonder if we benefit by adding a sentence at the end of the philosophy section that essentially states that in a 180-day school year, 18 days of absences will result in a chronic absenteeism designation. The reason why I want to uplift that, it's because very often 10% doesn't become very concrete at times to our families. And as I say over and over again, this is our communication to the public and our directives to the superintendent. I think that might be a good consideration just to make it more concrete. That 10% is not necessarily what people think it is. So that's one. Should I stop here? Should I go on to the second piece?
You can finish.
Okay. On page 3, where we have the dismissal precautions, I wonder if we just need to have kind of a more high-level statement, because this seems pretty procedural. And since many of the other very specific how-tos were moved into the regulation, I wonder if the same should be provided for much of the dismissal precautions. And I believe those are my two statements on this so far.
Thank you. Ms. Marin.
Well, I agree with Dr. Anderson's first comment about including in philosophy the chronic absenteeism trigger. So I support adding that kind of language there. I think the comment also about dismissal, I mean, precautions, really what we're talking about is it's the procedures, but we want to let people know that we're not going to release their children without the exact meeting what we have as the rule. I already thought what's there was kind of repetitive, so I'm fine to have that be a tighter section that just talks about, and I even wondered if the procedure is that, I thought it was that that students can only be released to the emergency person or person listed in SIS. So if there's something else, like a neighbor can come by, I don't even know if that's allowable, Dr. Reed, but if so, do they come in with a note or does the parent call? And that might be a regulation, but again, are our children allowed to leave with people not listed in SIS as their allowable, person? Do you know? No, we're not.
Only the emergency contact persons on a student's file would be authorized to authorize the release of a student either to themselves or to someone else, but that has to go through those people. I don't know
Okay.
how to explain that, but a neighbor just can't show up without the school confirming that the neighbor's coming on behalf of one of those parent, guardian, or caregivers, whatever the language is that the board chooses, but whoever's on that emergency contact would be the sole arbiter of release.
So that's what I think is important to say, is that, one, we're not going to release any student unless they're with, two, that person who's already listed in SIS or their designee. Those are the most important things I think the family needs to understand, and then everything else could be procedural. So I do agree with Dr. Anderson's input there. The other comments I had was, I think it's good that and I think we talked about this last time, adding in for the mental health as an excused absence, but I do know that, and I had a parent ask me about this recently, if the parent is saying my child needs a mental health day and they're up to 15 or 16, and now they're starting to rack up unexcused absences, I think it's important to qualify that while a parent or guardian may say my child's taking a mental health day, unless it's backed by some kind of medical note, even if it's a social worker note, it is going to be deigned as an unexcused absence. And I get that fairly often, that request. The student's taking a mental health day, they don't have an approved doctor's note. Well, that right now, that is an unexcused absence in our system. So is this where we clarify how we are going to ask guardians to justify or not that their student is taking a mental health day? So that's a question. I don't know if Dr. Reed, you want to answer, or we could just keep it for discussion.
Where, and I apologize.
No,
I don't
no,
know
so
where you're
it's,
pulling it from it.
It's in section Roman numeral 4A, the new language,
Under
third
excused
sentence says.
absences.
So we're allowing it, right? But, if it's a medical procedure, or it seems like when families are asked to provide medical as the reason, then they say we need a doctor's note. And if they're doing that for mental health, they may not have a doctor's note, and so these families are upset that their child is being unexcused, having an unexcused absence. So I'm saying if we're going to put in here that is an acceptable allowance, well, what is acceptable proof or justification?
So I think in 4A, there's not a requirement that says that a doctor's note is required. It's if in the parent's judgment, they need a mental health day, I believe based on this policy, that would be sufficient. I think there may be cases when it's multiple mental health days that a school might say, we would, that seems to be a larger issue, and we would, appreciate a professional mental health individual certifying that, that they're supporting your student. But I don't think, if there are 1 or 2 days for mental health days, that there's a requirement for a physician's note or a counselor note or so forth.
Well, if I could just follow up, I mean, that may be a very reasonable path forward, but right now, the schools must list it as an unexcused absence. That's what, I have emails from parents saying, my daughter is now on the 15th day of, if we're at the year of a mental health, and it's being counted as an unexcused absence. So if you want to have it happen as you explained, it sounds like something needs to change in how it's being logged.
I can check into that.
And I
Ms.
could show you the email I had that might help us further look into that.
All right. I do think that when we think about what I know principals are wrestling with is that both excused and unexcused absences count towards chronic absenteeism. So even if a student has 15 excused absences in the first 150 days, that's 10% of the school year to that point, and that student would be considered chronically absent, even though they were all excused. And that's where we have had principals say, it's hard to get parents to understand that that going on a trip or taking a family vacation or fill in the blank, even though a parent excuses it, still counts against the school for chronic absenteeism. So I think that's, in fact, last year when we did or maybe it was 2 years ago, we did some checking at some of our high schools, and we were surprised to find that one of the reasons for our chronic absenteeism being so high after COVID was actually our students averaging, if you recall, I'm going to paraphrase, but data 3.0 and above, and who were students in general in good standing, because we had a vision, I think, of students that perhaps were struggling academically and so forth, not coming to school, but that was not the case. In fact, that the group that had accelerated their absences were actually students academically performing above average, whose parents were saying they need a break here and there. But it still counts against the school in terms of chronic absenteeism. I think that we want to I think the reason the 10% was listed, or 10% or more, is because at any point in the year, we want to define, even if we're 100 days in, if a student's missed 10 days, we don't want to wait till they miss 18 days before they're called chronically absent, because at 100 days, having missed 10 or 12 puts them in that category and would make them eligible for some of our attendance interventions, like extra programs during break times or Saturday or after school. So I just think that was strategically named, and I probably should have done a better job of explaining that from the get-go in the changed language.
Ms. Eismerheiser, do you have anything to add? Okay, I'll take my turn. I agree with Dr. Reed. I think that I'm not saying we can't put an example of the mathematical equation here at the end of philosophy, but I also think 10% is pretty easy to calculate. But I would fear putting it as 18 days out of 180, because as she indicated, the clock starts the first day. You miss 2 days of the first 10 days, you're chronically absent. Okay, so we need people to understand it's 10% of the number of days of school. But if we need to add something that clarifies that at some other point, I'm not opposed to it. In terms of the mental health challenges, I think that people just need to understand exactly what Dr. Reed just explained. It doesn't matter at the end of the day whether something's excused or not excused, quite frankly. There was a time when we graded behavior. There was a time when something was excused, you weren't eligible to make up what you missed. But we don't do that anymore. So whether it's excused or unexcused, you're eligible for makeups for what you missed on the day you weren't there. So I understand parents getting in the weeds. I will just say this, that I certainly don't want to be a school that says, Robin Lady needs a mental health day today because I told my mom, I'm pretty kept up on things and I need to go get a pedicure. I'm not trying to be insensitive, but there are people who have real mental health issues, and it's important that schools know when that's going on, and I think that's what they're naming here. And when they know that that's what's going on, I don't think parents are coming up against situations where it's not excused, because most of us are, talking with private therapists, or we understand that we're in a partial day treatment. We understand things that are going on. So, again, I'm glad it's named in here because it wasn't prior. So I'm glad it's named. The other thing from Dr. Anderson, from both Dr. Anderson and Ms. Marin, you want them to name the emergency care card under dismissal precautions, or you want dismissal? Because I think procedurally, it says a formal checkout system is maintained at each school. So I think that's the operationalized part of it. I'm comfortable with what's written, but if you want clarity in the first sentence, principals do not release a student during the school day to any person not authorized on the emergency care card issued, right? If we want to name the emergency care card, which is captured in SIS, I'm okay with adding that. So I guess the last thing I'll say is I'm okay with this policy as it's written, but I can also do some slight, adjustments if that's what people are asking for. Mr. Sizemore-Heiser.
Just really quickly on that last topic, naming the emergency care card, is there ever a situation where a parent gives, verbal consent to release a child to someone not on that card?
Are you saying a verbal consent?
Well, yeah, or an email. I'm thinking of a situation
Yes.
where there's an emergency and everyone on the emergency care card isn't available, and a parent can say, hey, they're all available. My concern is if we name it, does that take that away? Do we allow that if there's ever a situation where, I don't know, let's say, both parents are named on the card, both parents are out of town, and the neighbor's also out of town who's named, and the kid needs to be picked up and taken to the hospital. Is there a situation where a family member or the parent might say in an email, so there's a record of it, I give permission for Miss Lady to pick up, little Joe and take him to the hospital? Is that something that we allow or not?
Yes, ma'am, I believe we would allow that. The point is that we just want to make sure we make contact with somebody who's on that emergency list, and life happens.
Yeah.
We just want to make sure that that contact is given clear direction on how they want the situation managed for their child.
So I might be uncomfortable naming the card itself, but something, I think the language here is fine. So that's just,
I'm fine with that. Dr. Anderson, do you want to go back?
Yes, please. Oops, okay. I think there was a misunderstanding regarding my statements about dismissal precautions. I just thought that whole section was a little bit too prescriptive, and it was the how-to, which I believe should live in the regulation. My advocacy was for a high-level statement, which essentially could be that first sentence of students are released only on request and authorization of a parent or guardian. I think that pretty much speaks to what our expectations are for the policy. Everything else, I think, could live in the procedures, which are the regulations. I did not have any commentary regarding name cards, because as somebody who released many a child over these years, we do go beyond those that are named in the card. But that was not my comment or my advocacy. It was just to remove what seems procedural and to have a high-level statement, which I think is satisfied by that very first sentence in the second paragraph under that section. And then I did send some language to you all. I just emailed it to add that additional statement. And I do understand as we keep going, a child could be chronically absent at any time, but still having some sort of very clear picture, I think would be very helpful to families. So I did send some language that I would like to make a motion for in just a little while. But I did have one more clarification because I thought the conversation around this was different. Dr. Reed, suspensions are considered to be unexcused absences and are counted towards chronic absenteeism?
Let me check. I know in the state I came from, that was not true. They were counted as excused absences, so let me find out here real quick.
Thank you, because in section 3, which is the philosophy, that final sentence says excused absences, unexcused absences, and suspensions. If suspensions are count towards unexcused absences and chronic absenteeism, I think we have another can of worms there that can be potentially be brought to our attention by families whose children are suspended.
Let me check on that.
Sure. While you do that, can I make my motion to add the 180-day language as the final sentence to the philosophy section?
I just responded to your, if you want me to be clear, I just responded to your email with a different
Oh.
idea. I don't want it to
Yeah.
be 180 because that's the end of the year. I said, for example, at 50 days, if a student's missed 5, they're designated chronically absent. I want to back it up so people understand it's a snapshot in time as we move through the year.
And I would be fine with that, just so long as we have something that delineates such. I'm just pulling it up. I didn't have that screen up. 50 days. Yeah, I'm fine with what you have amended.
Any other comments on that? You have a second, or you want to comment? Ms. Marin?
I have a comment. So, I mean, I love that this is an example of why it's important to talk about these things, because we're going to codify this. And regarding unexcused and excused, I've had staff in the past advocate to take a similar approach when it comes to their leave. You know, they have sick leave and then they have other leave. And staff in the past have advocated to say, just give me my bank of leave and I'll use it as I'd like, as I'm a professional. And so that aside, if it doesn't really matter if it's excused or unexcused, we should stop asking people to delineate. And that would really further make the case that any absence from school, even when you need to, is still something to be used very sparingly. And by continuing to say to people, it's excused, it's pointless, because, and then the philosophy really indicates what Ms. Lady is talking about, which is basically, you know, throughout the year, if at any given time you're missing 10% of the days of school, your kid is chronically absent. So maybe we don't have an unexcused absence piece, and that would really need to, though, I think, necessitate a campaign, an education campaign for families, which I would think would be good to do at the start of the year, not at this point. So maybe this goes into effect for the next school year or whatnot, but I think it's an important stake to put in the ground at this time. I'll stop there on that one. I do have
Piggyback on that while I wait for Dr. Reed to give me my answer. I think Ms. Mayer has made a very, very strong point, because I have spent years explaining to parents why they both count, because they figured if it's excused, then it's okay. So I definitely would like to pursue that statement a little bit. But
Yeah,
I
please
just
agree.
let me know, since I can't see when Dr. Reed has a response for me.
Yeah, Dr. I don't know if you want to respond now, but I'm happy to hold my other questions if anyone else wants to talk about this.
So, you know, I think this is one of those age-old questions in education, right? Because there's always an argument. We think it's unexcused. Someone thinks it's excused. The delineation may not matter to the state in regards to determining chronic absenteeism rates. It does, however, give parents the authority to make decisions about attendance for their student. And there are other activities that are often predicated on excused or unexcused absences. You know, you lose privileges to participate in other activities, sports, plays, bands. I mean, a lot of things are predicated on making sure that students are in attendance and not, quote unquote, truant or skipping school. You know, if you have to have your orthodontic appointment, that is different than missing the bus and carousing around the community for the morning. So I think there is a space where we have to be, there are some things excused and there are some things that are unexcused. It's an imperfect system, but it does give parents the authority to say you need to go to school, right? And that when we think you're at school, you better be at school. And I think it's important that parents retain that decision-making. And where we struggle when, particularly with younger children who can't get themselves to school, when it's the parent that's not getting a child to school, obviously schools intervene differently, but I do think there's a space for excused and unexcused, even if they both count in the state database.
That's another great point. But then I will say there was one, you had said just a few minutes ago in the conversation, something about, you know, if a child is medically out and then or has a mental health issue and they call and they need to kind of it was like they needed to justify to the staff that it's still excused. And that makes me uncomfortable because it's a private matter. If it's medical, for whatever reason, the parent says it's medical, that's enough. So how do we get away from that subjectivity of a parent or caregiver having to explain? And I'm not saying they need to have a doctor's note. I mean, I remember during COVID, that was very overwhelming. But and maybe this goes in the regulation, but again, these are just things I'm hearing from families that come up, and there's murky areas that cause some grief.
So I think it is probably more appropriately placed in the regulation, which is sort of the how we get to the what the board expects. And I do think that it often comes down to numbers. Several mental health days that don't represent 10% of the school year likely are going to receive less attention. But if the mental health days or any medical days or any days become more of a pattern than not, I think we expect our schools, our counselors, social workers, and so forth to, work with families to support a better attendance pattern, because we know in general, better attendance is going to support more learning in the classroom. So I think it's not the ability to take the day, it's more so how many days, and is that becoming the default pattern versus coming to school being the default pattern?
Ms. Sizemore-Heiser?
Just very quickly, don't teachers, well, my experience is some teachers rely on knowing whether excused or unexcused to allow for makeups of tests and assignments as well. So I think that would be an impact if we stopped keeping track of which ones are which.
Yes, ma'am, that was my point in terms there are other decision-making that are predicated on that distinction currently.
So I think what's on the table now is a motion to add under philosophy an additional final sentence that says, for example, comma, 50 days into the year, comma, if the student has missed 5 days, comma, they are designated as chronically absent. Is there a second? Or an edit? Or an
Second.
edit?
Yeah, I think I like your percentage analogy. Just like, so 10% means chronic absence, for example. Is that what you did?
Yes.
Okay, yes, then I agree with that.
Okay.
I think Ms. Anderson, Dr. Anderson seconded.
Okay, Dr. Anderson seconded that.
Who was the mover?
Well, I brought the motion, so I guess,
You can't.
but I
as the
can't move
chair.
it. Okay.
I will bring the motion. I will move it. I will move
Dr.
as
Anderson
amended in
moved
the
it.
email that Ms.
Ms. Marin
Lady sent.
seconded it. Dr. Reed?
I just wanted to clarify, Dr. Anderson, the question on suspensions. And suspensions are excused absences. So this sentence, which looks a bit like a run-on sentence, includes excused, unexcused, and comma, and suspensions. But suspensions are characterized as excused because they're not in the hands of a parent to determine.
And do suspensions, Dr. Reed, count towards chronic absenteeism?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay, that's a different conversation right there, but thank you for that answer. So here's the question then, and I know we have a vote on the table. So Miss Lady, if we could let the vote go on, because I do have a question that piggybacks to the response I just received from Dr. Reed.
Sure, I'll call the question.
Thank you. Question's been called. All those in favor of the verbiage on the screen that has been added under philosophy, raise your hand. Ms. Marin, Ms. Sizemore-Heiser, Dr. Anderson, and myself. That's unanimous. It passes. So yes, back to Dr. Anderson.
Thank you. So, Dr. Reed, if you're saying that suspensions are part of excused absences, do we need to have it delineated as provided under philosophy, or could we just stop the period at unexcused absences?
That's the will of the board. I mean, you could determine that one way or another. I think in the regulation, we would want to make sure staff understood that suspensions are excused and do count towards chronic absenteeism.
It just seems, thank you for that. It just seems to be standing alone as a third category here. Because if it's under excused absences, I guess my question is, what would be the risk to not having it be added in the philosophy section?
I don't think there's a risk. I think it's a preference. I think as long as it sits in the regulation and our practice, then that's sufficient.
And I would also submit that we need to just end that period at unexcused absences, because it just raises, I think, more inquiries than it needs to if it's a third bucket.
Ms. Marin?
I agree with what Dr. Anderson is saying. Something I'm just wondering, though, if we can pause for a second and go back to the exercise of us trying to get a more consistent review approach. So, like, there are these bigger pieces, like the ones we just talked about, and then there's smaller editorial things that are important. They're not just copy edits, right? Like in section B2, it says, the first full paragraph says, when a parent provides an acceptable reason. Okay, well, an acceptable reason per the above section. Well, maybe that's more of a copy edit. But for some of these things, like, can we agree to say this section needs to be, tightened or whatever, and then just, is it the clerks that do that tweaking? Like, there's some things, or like the part about releasing a student only to someone designated in CIS. Really, what it should be, that language should be whatever it is verbatim in CIS. If it's emergency card or emergency contact or whatever it is, right? Like, I'm trying to separate out the wordsmithing at the table. Like, can we think about how to, in the future, like, categorize that stuff so we could focus on the meat of things? You know what I'm saying?
I understand the question.
Okay.
However, if it's not wordsmith the way each individual member likes it, we're going to be back at the table. So I understand, like, I'm
Right,
going to
like-
say, like, I'm comfortable with what you just stated. Like, principals do not release a student during the school day to any person not authorized by the student's parent or guardian, period. The parent or guardian fills out the emergency
Right.
care card. It's what goes in.
As designated on the student emergency
wouldn't-
card, whatever it is.
But I wouldn't do that because of the point that there have been situations where someone not designated on the emergency care card actually is who you release the child to. It could be a grandparent. There could be a tragic thing that happened in the family, and the people on the emergency care card can't come, but you know what I mean? Like, there are situations where we have released someone to someone authorized by someone on the card, but not to someone on the card.
But again, we could just say that and say, what I'm getting at is, I don't want to call it whatever it is here, the emergency care card, and it's technically called something else in CIS. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a time to be precise. I guess too, it's just some of the other.
But I'm agreeing with you, which is
Okay,
why
no, I get it.
I don't want to name CIS or
Right.
ECC.
That's fine. I guess, so I agree with what Dr. Anderson is saying, that it shouldn't be and suspension, but I don't want us to spend more time now figuring out where a period goes or whatever, right? Like, so does that go to the clerk, and then does that come back to us for a final review, and then it moves on to action? Like, so I don't know if we need to decide this very second, we could decide at the end of the meeting, but again, these is like an overall process, how are we going to do this business? Because we also shouldn't have acronyms in here. It shouldn't say VDOE or VA code. Everything gets written out. If it's an acronym, it's defined at first use. That's just standard AP stuff. So,
All right, well,
Yeah.
so one step at a time here. So I'm hearing from Dr. Anderson a motion, I think you're seconding, that says, including excused absences and unexcused absences, period, delete, and suspensions.
that is correct.
Okay, so I have, Ms. Heisman, I can't make motions to vote. They told.
I'm gonna say without objection. Okay, you-
Okay. Thank you. Without objection, does everybody agree with the motion as edited on the screen as well, but you have to go up a page?
Seeing no other further comments,
you can-
I will go ahead and call the
you can call-
question. That's what we do in our full board meeting, so
you
I'm
can
happy to
call-
just
You can call
confirm.
for a vote if there's no other comments. I'll call for the vote.
I took out, I put and unexcused.
Okay, so the new terminology is on the screen. All those in favor? Ms. Marin, Ms. Sizemore Heiser, Dr. Anderson, myself, it passes.
Point of order, real quick.
Yes.
Just to go back to I do believe if there's no one else to speak, you can say, well, seeing there's no other speakers, I'm going to call for a vote on the motion.
Okay, thank you. So the only other thing I've heard us talk about in here is dismissal precautions. So I'd like to actually.
And Ms. Lady, my first question regarding caregivers, are we going to make that part of the vernacular or leave that alone? I just need to have some sort of resolution.
I think that we're leaving that alone until we can have a full board discussion, and then it might be something that is blanketed. We just approve that we go through and make that change in every policy, as opposed to voting on every individual policy. Does that make sense?
It does. Can you give, it doesn't have to be right now, but if you can give some direction as to how will it get to the full board and the timetable for that?
Well, let me ask this question. We need to come to consensus as a governance committee as how we want that worded. And then once we come to consensus as a governance committee, then I think we can just put it on consent agenda. Ms. Sizemore Heiser.
I would suggest we make a motion that we make a blanket statement that whenever we refer to parents, parents, guardians, it says parents, guardians, and caregivers throughout our policies. And I would make a motion that that would be updated by our clerk, so we don't have to vote on it every time. And in the language I suggest, I'm not tied to it, is parents, guardians, and caregivers.
I will second that.
So I duly noted. Would you like to speak to your motion?
I don't think so.
Dr. Anderson, would you like to speak to your motion?
Just briefly to say, we have used that term in multiple other policies that we have crafted from its start. The issue seems to be with existing policies.
Ms. Marin.
I did try to call up previous documents, and I was not able to match it the last time. It seems like there is no other attempt to try and use what's been done. Like I want to pull up what's currently in the proposed SR&R regulation, because I think whatever is in there is what we should use. And so I'm going to pull that up right now. I think parents, guardians, caregivers is very long, and we're going to have to repeat it all throughout, and we're going to say parents at first reference. And so let me just take a moment while perhaps you all continue talking, see what was in the draft SR&R, and then we have to vote on that motion that stood, so.
Well, and my comment on the motion is that I'm concerned about it because if you look at dismissal precautions and the sentences, principals do not release a student during the school day to any person not authorized by the student's parent/guardian. If you ask caregiver there, that's not appropriate to add caregiver there. But I get when you add caregiver around other things we're talking about in policy. So it is a challenge because that's not going to be appropriate in that particular context. So maybe we table this conversation and we can discuss it in 2x2s and with other board members, individually offline and come back.
I believe as chair, you can table the motion till the next meeting.
Okay, then I would like to table this till the next meeting. Ms. Marin.
May I suggest, Chair, are you able to just write out what the suggestion is? Like you just made a great point about parent/legal guardian for this kind of thing. But even in this, it might actually refer to parents and caregivers when we're talking about helping kids. So is it possible for you to just jot down what you think it is? And I think that would help us immensely.
Sure, I guess what I'm thinking is when it speaks to something legal, it should be parent and legal guardian. And then when it references other types of support or times when caregivers, parents, it's appropriate to be supporting a student, then we would add parents, guardians, and caregivers, or something similar, if there's another more concise way to say it.
Miss Lady, may I ask a question? Is Mr. Foster in the room?
Yes, he is.
Mr. Foster, how do we categorize a circumstance in which a child is in foster care and that foster family makes the decisions at the schools? Would they be categorized as a guardian or as a caregiver?
I believe they would be categorized as a guardian.
Thank you. That was it. That was the only inquiry I had. Thank you.
Okay, so back to this, under dismissal precautions, I'm hearing some support for just the first sentence, not the second paragraph. I'm guessing the second paragraph is in there because I, as a high school person, am familiar with the times that a kid can sign an 18-year-old declaration, which allows them to sign themselves out of school. So I think the reason that that is in there is because it goes beyond a parent and guardian, but this can be in regulation if everyone else is comfortable with it, but I believe that's why this was included. So I want to make sure people understand that some kids turn 18.
Lady, can you identify the section you're referring to? I didn't follow where you started.
Section 6, dismissal precautions. That second paragraph, which seems a little in the weeds to some people, but I'm just articulating that I believe that what reason it's there is because there is a document that's an 18-year-old declaration that allows a student to sign themselves out. That's often in situations where they're in a situation where they might not be living with their legal parent or guardian, but they're coming to school, they're doing all the things, and we work with them as a school. It's a unique situation, but my guess is that's why that's there. Ms. Marin?
Boy, now I'm thinking we need a definition section. I just looked up on the SRNR web page on FCPS. It says parent/guardian, any parent, guardian, legal custodian, or other person having control or charge of a child. So that's parent or guardian. We do not define caregiver on our SRNR webpage. So right now, again, it is parent/guardian. And I think the point, though, about an 18-year-old is a really great one and super pertinent. So do we need to state something even about an 18-year-old can sign themselves in or out? I mean, they're
But
not.
I think that's the second paragraph in this particular policy. I think that's what that says. Release of pupils who are not residing with or under the supervision of a parent or guardian, the burden of proof of authority of the person to receive the students on the requesting party. I think it's multi-layered in there. But I can defer, if you want, to Dr. Reed.
I'm not sure I read what you are articulating, Miss Lady, in that paragraph regarding students being able to sign themselves. It must be too buried for me to identify it.
Well, I'm comfortable removing the paragraph. I was just trying to give some context to the fact that there are always some extenuating circumstances around where the first paragraph is not completely 100% all the time exactly how it's done. But it can be in operations. So I'm fine with removing the second paragraph and just taking the first sentence for dismissal precautions.
I would second that if you can't make a motion. I will make that motion because I think much of those procedures can live in the regulation.
I can second.
Okay, Ms. Marin has seconded it. Would you like to speak to your motion?
No, thank you.
Okay.
I'm
Ms.
good.
Marin?
I'm good, thank you.
All right, so what's on the table is that under dismissal precautions, we only keep principals do not release a student during the school day to any person not authorized by the student's parent/guardian to assume responsibility for the pupil. Take the rest of it out. Not seeing any objection, can we, all those in favor? Ms. Marin, Ms. Sizemore-Heiser, Dr. Anderson, and myself. It passes. Can we make a motion to pass the policy? Ms. Marin.
I have one more little thing. In the interest of trying to make language positive, so that paragraph, that the only one existing now under 4, and it helps people understand, principals will release students only to the listed person on the care card, right? It's confusing. We won't release student to any person not authorized. Well, it's easier to say that positive. Students will only be released to the people that are authorized to do it. I mean, it's a grammatical thing, but
Can I say this is an edit, and if we could do this without objection, I also support the positive wording.
just said it. So principals will release a student, I don't know, it's an editorial
I,
thing.
I
don't want to
got
say-
one, Miss Marin. Principals will only release a student during the school day. I'm sorry, principals will release a student during the school day only to persons authorized by the student's parent, guardian, blah, blah, and, on and on.
Should it be can instead of will?
Shall?
Well,
It would be may. Parents may release a student during the school day. Or, principals may release a student during the school day to only
only two.
So flip.
Does anyone else want to speak to this motion?
If you could reread it for me, please.
So it's principals may release a student during the school day only to persons authorized by the student's parent/guardian to assume responsibility for the pupil.
Thank you.
All right, all those in favor? Ms. Marin, Ms. Sizemore Heiser, Dr. Anderson, myself, that passes.
Ms. Lady, I'd like to make a motion to approve the policy and send it to the board.
Second.
Okay. Would you like to speak to your motion?
No, thank you.
Dr. Anderson?
No, thank you.
Not seeing any other hands. All those in favor of the policy as amended? Ms. Marin, Ms. Sizemore Heiser, Dr. Anderson, myself. It is passed. Okay. All right, I call on Dr. Reed for item 1.01, policy 2301, psychological testing, screening, student evaluation, and placement. Dr. Reed.
Thank you, Ms. Lady. The memo for this document notes that the purpose of this policy is to establish a policy regarding the provision of psychological services for students. This policy was reviewed and updated by the Office of the Chief Academic Officer and Division Counsel and represents best practices. Changes that you will see reflected are the result of collaboration and consultation with parents or guardians, school staff, principals, and other administrators. Direct services for students were highlighted along with professional development for staff, for school personnel, and learning opportunities for families. Additionally, Section 3, the philosophy has been added, and the title in Section 4 has been changed from requirements to responsibilities. There is no VSBA matching policy.
Thank you. Anyone want to comment on the policy? Seeing no hands up.
My hand is up.
Dr. Anderson?
I'd like to make a motion to approve this policy, but the copy that I have, responsibilities, the S is changed with the P, so minus that little change. I'd like to go ahead and motion for it to. Oh, that's right. I'd like to make a motion for us to approve with fixing that minor edit, with making that minor edit.
It is now spelled correctly. Is there a second? Ms. Sizemore Heiser? Dr. Anderson, would you like to speak to your motion?
I think I did.
Ms. Marin?
Just one question. In the philosophy, it says the schools shall maintain psychological services. Do you think that it should be more broad and say the school division? Because I don't believe we have staffing so that there is a professional psychologist in every school. Some of them are split, I think. So does it make more sense to say the school division shall maintain instead of the schools? I don't even know if we talk about the schools like that, so.
I like that. I would second that.
Okay, so change.
No objection, maybe a without objection
Without
kind of
objection.
thing.
Okay, without objection, let's go ahead and make that change. So it says the school division.
Yes.
Okay, not seeing any other hands up. All those in favor of passing the policy as it exists on the screen? Ms. Marin, Ms. Sizemore Heiser, Dr. Anderson, myself. Policy passes. I call on Dr. Reed for item 1.05, policy 2401, academic placement of students in grades K-8.
Thank you, Ms. Lady. The purpose of this policy is to establish policy regarding the academic placement of students in kindergarten through 8th grade. The policy has been reviewed and updated by the Office of Chief Academic Officer and the Division Council and represents best practices. Changes made include adding 2 sections, the philosophy and responsibilities, and removing the last section in section 5, referring to the regulation. Matching VSBA policies have been attached.
Ms. Sizemore Heiser.
Thank you. This is one of the 2 policies. I haven't, thank you. Thank you, though. This is one of the 2 policies that Dr. Anderson and I were tasked to look at, and we played a lot of phone and text tag, but we did I made some suggestions today that I think she has looked at as well. But in section 5, I wanted to add the word consultation in there around exceptions to placement or movement from level to level. Right now, the policy reads, exceptions shall be made only after, so with the students, parents, and caregivers, but final decision rests on the school authorities. I thought it should be made only after consultation with the parents and caregivers, because I think they should be part of that conversation about moving students from level to level. So,
Can you clarify? I don't understand what you're
If you're
saying.
making a motion to that end, Ms. Sizemore
Yes,
Heiser,
I'm
I
making
will
a
support
motion.
it. I
Yeah.
will second it.
yeah, I'm making a motion to add the word consultation. So it says, exceptions shall be made only after consultation, prior notification, and explanation to each student's parents. Right now, it says, exceptions shall be made only after prior notification and explanation to students' parents. I wanted to add the word consultation in there. It feels more collaborative than
second.
just explaining. Only after consultation, prior notification, and exception. So the word after, the word after, the word after,
After the word after.
put the word consultation, yeah. To add that word, so it's a little more collaborative, and it's not just telling them, but consulting with them. Parents may have a reason they don't want to move their student. Yes, there should be a comma after consultation, but. A comma after prior notification. The Oxford comma, I think. Me too. Me too. That's the motion on the table, is to add the word consultation to make it more collaborative.
Ms. Marin.
So I think this one I had kind of an issue with last time around, because I think it could be expansive and it could include all sorts of placements, including advanced academic. The way that Section 5 currently reads, it seems to be only about grade levels. And in that way, I can support the language of the motion. But I think the title is confusing because, again, progression and exceptions, and we don't want to be subjective about exceptions. About grade level placement, that to me seems reasonable. But when it comes to, we know how trying to get children into the advanced academic process and how that has been inequitable, I wouldn't want this to open the door into saying, well, if, I'm sorry, the word you just said, what did you just say?
Consultation.
Consultation, right? We wouldn't want that to be interpreted as, well, a parent wants to consult with a teacher to get their student placed into AAP because they weren't selected the first time around. But this is also why I think this policy could be a lot bigger than it currently is and meaty and talk about advanced academic placement and 2E. But also, it's curious that it remains in special services. Shouldn't it be in instruction, this whole policy? Why is it in special services or the chief of schools? I think it's the chief of schools where it would reside. That's per the edits of the next one, commencement activities as well, I think should be. And then also, is it different for secondary students? Do we have a different policy for 9 through 12? So I just think, what is our intention with this policy? Is it to talk explicitly about grade level placement and possible change in that? And if it is, I think we need to make that title a lot more clear, because academic placement to me signifies one of our biggest placement activities that happens, which is advanced academics. Could even be CTE, so.
Dr. Anderson.
Thank you. And yes, I confer. I concur with what Ms. Sizemore-Heiser shared. We did play a lot of text and phone tag, but anyway, here we are. One of the things that I also think may be a consideration, whether it is to be included or not to be included, but minimally to offer clarity, is whether or not this would also be this would impact retention decisions and acceleration decisions, because those are two questions that often come up. So my question, I guess, is to Dr. Reed. Do you see retention being part of this policy per se? Because sometimes parents desire it, or I know schools don't typically put that forward as a plan, generally speaking, but also acceleration is also a very frequent parent conversation. I wonder, where do you see those two buckets? Where do you see them falling in terms of having a comprehensive and fulsome discussion?
I think that this is a policy that's at a fairly high level. I think Section 5 talks about progression, which would be where retention would be a conversation, which is why I believe that you are looking at adding the term consultation for that conversation. I think this is also a policy that speaks to students transferring in and trying to place them at the right grade level, which is under the transfer. But I do think exceptions to the typical progression are addressed here, and talks at a high level about exceptions shall be made only after consultation and prior notification and so forth. So I do think retention is spoken to in this policy.
Thank you. Do you anticipate that would be the same to be responsive to what Ms. Marin just raised?
The same to what Ms. Marin just raised. Ms. Marin,
In terms of advanced academic placements, are those considered exceptions, or does that live someplace else altogether? And if so, where?
my understanding would be that would live somewhere else because they're still placed in fourth grade. They might be in fourth grade AAP, which is a program decision rather than a placement decision. An academic placement seems to go by grade level. I do suppose if students came in who maybe were younger than their age might indicate the grade should be, that I suppose an exception could be determined at that time after a meeting. But I do think that AAP placement sits likely somewhere else, and I would have to ferret through all of the policies and regulations to figure out where that sits. But I don't think it's necessarily, this as it reads would not necessarily be clear about that.
Thank you. Is there space for the regulation that accompanies this policy to be more specific in addressing retention and acceleration as potential exceptions?
I'm just pulling up the regulation right now to look at what it says right now. I guess it's just VSBA. You know, I certainly a regulation could provide more clarity. Sure.
If you have that regulation, can you share? Because I wasn't able to find it. Thank you. That was my last question.
Yeah, I think the regulation is actually quite clear. Promotion and retention is listed in here. And again, this is grades K through 8, because they're not credit bearing or credit dependent. And then it talks about to be placed in grade 9 through 12. But again, it does not specifically talk about academic. It looks like policy 2401 is academic. I don't know where AAP would be situated, but I can certainly look that up. But that's not connected to this policy or regulation. But retention is discussed in the regulation.
Thank you. Ms. Eismerheiser?
Thank you. And I think this is a great conversation in terms of the title and different pieces that should be in here. I just wanted to kind of focus a little back on the motion to kind of maybe deal with that and then kind of open up some of these broader topics. Because I do think there's a lot here that's important, and whether it's in the regulation or we look at that. I wanted to maybe get to the point about the word consultation. I think you bring a very fair points about, is it opening the door, and I think that's good. The reason I had thought about that a little bit when I was looking at this before the meeting, and one of the reasons I didn't think so, it says final decision rests with the school authorities in that, and consultation to me is, I guess when I read this, I didn't want to be a parent who said, oh, by the way, we're skipping your kid ahead a grade, right? And it just, here's your notification and here's why, as opposed to like, hey, want to bring you in and talk to you. I think that's what would happen in practice, but I thought it was important that that practice is reflected in our policy. So to me, consultation is just, hey, we want to move little, Melanie up a grade or hold her back. We want to talk to you about it, and here's your author notification. But it isn't, this is part of your decision. It's just we want to give you a little more collaborative conversation. That's what I was thinking at for a consultation. So I would prefer to keep the word in there because I think it's important for parents to be part of that engagement. But great conversation on other things. Thank you.
All right, I'll take a turn. I get that. My concern is that you have a lot of things going on. You have academic, sometimes people want to advance their kids too quickly, and athletically, they want to hold their kids back because they want to have them another year before they get into high school for eligibility. So I just want to make sure the word consultation isn't seen as, I can pick up the phone and have a consultation with my school about my kid, because typically it's the school reaching out to the family. But I'm not going to die on the sword. Okay. I want to say one other thing, and I need Dr. Reed. So go ahead, Ms. Eismerheiser.
I just wonder if there's a way to get to some of those concerns by saying exceptions shall be made only after the school consults with, notifies, and explains. So it's the school doing it as opposed to, maybe we'll get to that, so if, without objection, I would offer a friendly amendment, and obviously my seconder I would make sure she's okay with that, but after the school consults with, notifies and provides an explanation.
Or exceptions shall be made only after the school's consultation with.
Posting, if you want to have notified and.
If I may, just very quickly, Ms. Sizemore-Heiser, I know you're looking for me to second that, but I don't think that's true to practice, because many times parents reach out to the school wanting to have those discussions on retention or acceleration. It doesn't have to be the school that reaches out. The parents reach in as well. So it's unrealistic to think that parents will call and say, I'd like to have my kid accelerated or retained, and a conversation is not had, and perhaps even a change in the placement. I'm not even sure if what you're getting at right now is even true, because schools can't say to parents, oh no, we're not going to talk to you unless we reach out to you.
I don't know if that's, I guess I wouldn't, I'm sorry, may I answer back? The way I read it, and I respect what you're saying, because I don't want to limit it to only the school, which is why I didn't use the word only. I use school consults with, so it's, the parents can, nothing forbids the parents from reaching out, it's just the implication, the way we worded it is the school's responsibility, which is what I was trying to get at, as opposed to more equal. I don't mind the other wording, I was just trying to find a compromise, but I don't read this as forbidding parents from reaching out, or saying only school, right, or only the school can initiate it. I just think the exceptions can only be made after the school consults. The school's consultation could have been initiated by the parents, right? I wanted to put more of a school ownership than a equal ownership, is what I was trying to get at. I'm fine with either language, I was trying to find a compromise.
Okay.
You did that because it says the final decision still rests with the school authorities. So no matter who starts it, how it goes, final decision is still coming out of the school. Personally, I just think adding the consultation as you presented originally, was fine. I think it got to having a more collaborative approach and did not diminish the school's authority.
Well, then if it's not without objections, I'll go back to my previous motion, because that was on the table. So I think
That's
parliamentary
fine.
procedures, we'll go back to the pre-motion. So this part is what my suggestion.
Right, well, get it to them. I don't think that's what they're writing. So I have a different question. Dr. Reed, in terms of confusion about this being perhaps AAP related, and now I just handed my notes away, can we say, for example, under placement, students normally shall progress annually from grade level to grade level? Can we put in there to delineate grade levels as opposed to the possibility of someone interpreting it as an AAP placement?
Yes, ma'am, we could.
And then would it be appropriate, like similarly, under philosophy, instead of academic placement, could we say grade level placements for students?
Yes, ma'am. We'd probably want to retitle the policy then as well.
Well, that as well, and whether or not it should be with special services. I mean, Ms. Marin tossed out a lot of questions related to that. I'm okay with the purpose, establish policy regarding the academic placement of students in grades K-8.
Yes, ma'am, and I think it sits in the chief academic office because you have your psychologists there who may, and also those in early childhood who do the assessments for perhaps early kindergarten placement. All of those professionals are situated in the academic office.
Okay, so I'm okay. I'm with you on that in terms of special services. Although it's often a combination, because instructional services is going to do an assessment of, like, our student who was in 5th grade taking BC Calc at Chantilly.
Right.
So I'm just wondering, I'm going to ask my colleagues, without amending too much, if we just said students normally shall progress annually from grade level to grade level, would that suffice in sort of, squelching the idea this could be related to AAP, but leave the terms academic placement other places? Because it's defined in the purpose as placement in grades K-8?
So where would the language go specifically?
Under 5, students normally should progress annually from grade level to grade level.
Well, I think titling it at the top then, grade level placement
Instead
of
of
students
academic.
instead of academic placement.
Okay.
And I also do wonder though, is it only K-8? Does this not apply to 912? But
Well,
at least it gets to
912
some
is
of
in the
your-
regulation, and 912 is based on the number of credits you've earned.
Okay.
So it does relate to promotion in theory to grade 9. I would think.
I mean, perhaps for this time, if we make academic grade level and we make the change in section 5, as you said, this would be one of those things where if we could look at the totality of the series, right?
Yep, okay. All right.
Ms. Leedy, since we have a motion on the table from Ms. Sizemore Heiser, we need to deal with that
Yes,
first before we
yes.
can move on.
So the motion on the table is that we adopt the language, exceptions shall be made only after consultation, prior notification, comma, and explanation to each student's parents, but the final decision shall rest with the school authorities.
Just to clarify for Dr. Anderson, in case you can't see it, we went back to the original language, Dr. Anderson, that you seconded because there was a objection to the other language.
Thank you.
So
I'm in support. I'm voting.
the motion is from Ms. Sizemore Heiser, seconded by Dr. Anderson. Seeing no comments, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the amendment on the screen, Ms. Marin, Dr. Anderson, Ms. Sizemore Heiser, myself, it passes. So I'm trying to make a friendly amendment to it where at the very beginning, we, under the third bullet that's bolded sort of in the title, we changed the word academic to grade level.
Was that objection amendment?
And I have one other place to do it. And then down in section 5, placement, progression, and exceptions, that we add the word grade prior to both of the words level in the first sentence.
I'm sorry, I just had a question, clarification question on that for Dr. Reed.
Yes.
Dr. Reed, when we put in grade level and grade level here, does that impact our students who are in the 18 to 22-year-old program? Because they're not considered grade levels anymore, but they are progressing through their program. So that the ones that are Davis and Pulley and STEP aren't considered grade levels, I think, but there is a progression. So I don't know the answer. I just want to ask that before we
I
put the word in
think
there.
when you look at the title of the policy, if you want to scroll back down, this is in grades K
Sorry,
through
I
8.
missed that. My
No,
bad.
it's
You're right.
okay.
You're correct. Never mind. I withdraw the question.
However, it does say graduation requirements, which is confusing.
Yes.
Oh, that's the series title.
Yeah.
And then
it's
that's the policy
series.
title. Good.
Right.
I'm good. Thank you. Okay. Any comments on the change to academic to grade level placement and then the addition of the word grade in 2 places in section 5 in the first sentence? So seeing no objection, all those in favor of those changes, Ms. Marin, Ms. Sizemore Heiser?
I'm in favor.
Dr. Anderson and myself. Okay, it passes. Any more comments on the policy? Not seeing any. All those in favor of passing the policy as listed on the board, Ms.
We need a
Marin?
mover and a seconder.
Make a motion to pass the policy as listed on the board.
Ms. Marin seconds. All those in favor? Ms. Marin, Ms. Sizemore Heiser, myself,
I'm in favor.
Dr. Anderson. It's unanimous, it passes.
Miss Lady, just put, I can see Dr. Anderson. Would it be helpful if I could name that for you? Okay, you can see it. All right.
All right, I call on Dr. Reed for item 1.06, policy 2475, commencement activities.
Thank you, Ms. Lady. The purpose of this policy is to establish policy regarding commencement activities. It's been reviewed and updated by the Office of the Chief of Schools and Division Council and represents best practices. The changes to this policy include adding a philosophy statement about commencement activities and what they are designed to do to celebrate student achievements. There is no matching VSBA policy.
Ms. Sizemore Heiser.
Dr. Reed, a quick question on this. And this might just be easy fix. It says students receiving standard advanced studies, modified or applied studies. I don't believe there's a modified diploma anymore. I believe that was phased out. So I just wonder if we need to take that. But I want to confirm that. There used to be one, and I believe the last graduating year of that is phased out. But I would like to double check that.
So this was previously reviewed in November 22nd of 2021, so we're within the 5-year window. And I will ask staff to check here in the next few minutes if that cohort group is complete.
There was a cohort that was sort of I hate to, but phase grandfathered in, I believe they've graduated, but it would be good if they haven't, if they have, to take the modified out, because that diploma no longer exists.
Yes,
That's my
ma'am.
only comment.
We'll confirm that. And if it's, that group's aged out, we'll,
Just make a
delete it.
motion to say if that group has aged out and the diploma no longer exists, for us, for the modified to be stricken. For a second,
Second.
or without objection.
Without objection, is everyone okay with that? Ms. Marin, Ms. Eisner-Heiser, and myself? With Dr. Anderson abstaining. Or are you a no?
Here.
No objections.
Okay,
Thank you. It's unanimous for all four of us.
all right, so Dr. Reed, just, it can be stricken if you need to remove. If it's found to not exist, you can strike it. We just voted for that.
thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Not seeing any hands, I am gonna,
I have a question, Miss Lady. I'm so sorry.
Dr. Anderson.
This is a question for Dr. Reed. Where will we have some direction to staff? I'm imagining this is in the procedures and the regulations, but I would like to know what I raised last time, which is kids being allowed, students, graduates being allowed to decorate their mortar boards. Right now, it seems to be a school decision. Some schools allow it, some schools do not. And there's an inherent inequity in that. Clearly, that would not live here because that is the procedure, but where does that live, or where could that live?
So I agree with you, Dr. Anderson, it would not live in a policy. Currently, it lives in school practices. And at this time, there's no, to my knowledge, there's been no conversation about moving it out of school practices.
Can you provide an explanation as to why we have kind of that outlier document? Because we had the same conversation regarding grading practices, and the board sought to pull that over into a regulation, which makes it something that is a little bit more firm, because the practices, they are or they're not. Could we have a similar approach with the graduation procedure practices and to pull that into regulation? What would be the risk of doing so?
I think that would be a question I would have to go back and talk with our chief of schools, our chief equity office, and our high school principal association.
Thank you, but I would still like to have kind of your take on the mortarboard decoration. Should it be a school by school decision, or should it be a division decision that all students are allowed to do this? Whatever the parameters are, the parameters are. But some schools just flatly say no and others allow it. So that's the piece that I want to get some clarification on.
I would have to go back, as I said, and speak with our chief of schools, our HSPA and chief equity office to, have a conversation about sort of in Fairfax County, how did we end up on this divergent path, and to what end and whose interests are served to bring, of this particular detail of the graduation ceremony centralized versus all the other details in a graduation ceremony. So I would want to defer to that, again, chief of schools, chief equity office, and our high school principals association to have that conversation about a preference to centralize versus decentralize that at this time.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And while that is not going to be what stops me from moving this policy forward with the small changes that just occurred, it is a question that has to be answered, because it is a point where in my community, it's a huge question every year when graduation comes around, and then they see that some schools are allowed, but then they are not. So sooner rather than later, for that question for me, I would like to have the response.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, not seeing any other hands, I have a friendly addendum that maybe will be easy. It's based on conversations the last time we were together, and I guess what I would probably be doing was adding another bullet 4. entitled Graduation Speakers. And I would propose that we state that current school board members and any individual running for office in the graduation year may not serve as a graduation speaker at commencement.
I will move that for you, Miss Lady, since you may not be able to.
All right, I have 3 people who've moved it, so I'll do Ms. Marin as a first, Ms. Sizemore Heiser as a first, Ms. Marin as a second.
All good, then I'll vote yes.
I don't really need to speak to it, but under 4, it would be letter F. It's under, or you could just make a subsection Roman numeral 4,
That's what I
graduation
was going to
speakers.
do.
Yeah,
I was going to do Roman numeral 4 listed as graduation speakers.
Graduation speakers is the title. Then current school board members and anyone running for office in the year of the graduation. And candidate, and any candidates for,
Well,
Elected
I
office.
said, well, I guess if I'm running for reelection, I'm still a candidate.
yeah. In
So I
that
can
election.
use the word
Any
candidate.
candidates running for elected office in the graduation year.
Yes, and any candidate running for office in the graduation year may
Graduation year.
not serve as a commencement speaker at graduation.
Yeah. At a graduation that year.
I would recommend instead of may, you should turn that into a shall.
Yeah, shall not serve, yeah.
Yeah, shall.
Yeah, shall not serve, not serve is serve. Sorry. I know it's hard to type as all these people are talking to you.
But how about at any graduation activities that year?
Graduation activities that year.
That could be senior awards, that could be,
Well, I wonder though, because
Oh, yeah.
sometimes there might be an award ceremony where the chair is speaking on behalf of the board.
okay, like, let's go back, please, so we can see that again.
Yeah, so I would say
Just say
graduation.
it, just say at graduation.
Is it called formally graduation or commencement? Like, what's the formal name for it? Yeah, so at any commencement
Then
activity.
just take, then to say as a speaker at any,
Why are you so?
As the commencement
You're
speaker.
muted.
Am I muted?
Dr. Anderson, you're unmuted.
Oh, okay. Can you clarify a little bit about the activities other than graduation? I heard a little bit of that. I'm trying to figure out what award ceremony that are happening at a specific school in which the chair would be speaking on behalf of the board.
I misspoke, that's not in there. So the way it reads is current school board members and any candidates running for elected office in the graduation year shall not serve as the commencement speaker at graduation. Or,
No, I think I was asking because I am in the favor of what I think you started to allude to with other activities. Other activities should also not have those candidates be speaking. And then I heard Ms. Sizemore Heiser say the chair speaks
I was just
at
that was just
different
an
places for the
example.
board. And I can't think of one where it's a specific school's award ceremony would have the chair speaking at it on behalf of the board.
That was just a specific example. It could be the magisterial member. It's just a current school board member. Let's say there's a senior award ceremony and they ask the current school board member at that school to come make a few statements to the seniors for their award ceremony. I was just thinking of different things that could be related to graduation. That was not something that I'm aware of. It was just a possible example.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
It's really as a commencement speaker. I don't know that, I'd be happy just to have this, because speaking to thousands is not what we want. And this is a better step than where we were. Not serve as a speaker at commencement, or, yeah, it's okay to just We could just have a simple declarative sentence. That would be okay.
That says commendment, just need a C instead of, or no, sorry, that was the cursor, that was my eyes.
Okay, so it reads now, current school board members and any candidates running for elected office in the graduation year shall not serve as a speaker at commencement.
I make the motion still.
Okay,
Can I get it to approve it? Yeah.
and not seeing any hands or comments, then let's vote on that terminology. All those in favor of what's been added, graduation speakers as a number 5 in the sentence? Ms. Marin, Ms. Sizemore-Heiser? Dr. Anderson? With Dr. Anderson, wait, from the desk, it passes 3-0. Ms. Marin?
I have one other matter. Thank you very much, Ms. Lady. So this first part of it talks about commencement, but then under 3B, it talks about diplomas. And those are two different things, because getting your diploma and walking in commencement are separate. And so we're going back up under section 3, requirements, okay? Well, I guess no, that's not true. Requirements, A does include diplomas, and I guess I just also want to clarify how much of this is about diplomas. Do we want to say that a student who, for instance, graduated the following year from adult high school can walk in the school he mostly got his coursework in? Do we want to say, I mean, it says foreign exchange. It's just a question. I mean, commencement activity is different than formally earning your diploma, and so we're talking about handing it out or issuing it, I guess, is where it happens. Or what if somebody isn't in the commencement? Do they get their diploma issued in some other way? Just asking if we need to speak to any of that.
Well, if I may, I think it answers some of your question under A. Students who complete diploma requirements at a high school special education center, I think that, or hearing like other placements, there are certain situations where they're allowed to walk with their base school.
Okay, no, thank you. Thank you for refreshing my memory. But what item A under requirements says is that a student who completes their degree from another FCPS program can walk and participate in commencement. It does not clarify if such a student would actually get their diploma through that institution. So the last two sentences of A say, yes, the student, even if they went to adult high school or another program, they can go walk in a school that perhaps they had spent some time in, but their diploma will be from that graduating institute. And I know I currently have someone who was at a base school, finished at a program, and would mean a lot to that student to have their diploma read the base school name. And apparently that is not allowed, or at least it's not the process right now. So because this talks about commencement activities and diploma, I think it's missing some clarification about that full piece of the diploma. It talks about if you're alternative school, you can walk, but it doesn't say what your diploma can be from.
Can you give a better example?
I have a student who was at Madison High School and needed to take a recess from Madison for a medical issue. That student then became 18, finished at our adult education program. That student would like the diploma to come from Madison. Currently, this doesn't distinguish what it would be. That student could walk in Madison's graduation. That's not what the student wants. The student actually wants the paper to say Madison. So it would seem that if that is going to live anywhere, it would live here, because we're talking about.
I don't think that can be done, because the transcript's going to reflect where the student earned the credits, and then it's not going to match the diploma.
Well, but also, we also allow students to get a new diploma if they went to Lewis High School before it was Lewis, or Justice High School before it was Justice. So just a lot of different practices. So I guess it's really, and for Dr. Reed, and I do have a question in about this particular matter with this Madison student.
So Ms. Marin, Ms. Brown is noting that there is a different policy.
Yeah, there's policy
20
requirements for graduation. And it deals with the regulations about alternative high school credit and requirements for graduation and graduation seals of achievement. That one might be.
Well, thank you. And that does remind me then, I think we've done a tremendous job today. I know one of these policies was on our agenda from back in January, so we're doing great. But like that would be a great example of let's be sure we have all of those related policies in one place, right? So we can look at the totality of what we have that regards commencement and diploma. So I would ask that we table this for further discussion. So I would suggest that we table this for further discussion so we can review that and if there's any other ones together at the same time.
Any other comments on that request? Okay, I'm happy to table it.
Sorry, Miss Lady. I was just going to say I'm fine with tabling it until we get the rest of that information as well. I have no objection.
Dr. Reed?
I'm obviously fine with whatever the choice is here. I would say that the title for this policy is commencement activities, not necessarily, but it's, so I think that this would be like the ceremony more so than the graduation requirements and how they're noted by school is all I was saying.
And she's making a good point. This regulation talks about who can walk. It doesn't say what diploma we're handing them says.
But it does say under Section 3B, foreign exchange, diplomas will not be issued to foreign exchange students. So we are talking about who doesn't get a diploma. So then we take that out or we open this up. We could talk about it next time, but it's...
I think that's delineated because we allow them as part of their foreign exchange experience to walk. But the only other people who walk are graduating that June or that August or that, January or February. They're the only ones allowed to walk who are not earning a diploma, which is why they're not given one. So I do see the delineation. I'm happy to push it, but I do understand the point that what you're asking for is what the diploma is going to say.
Well, and I do think if there's this other policy, 2460, that we should definitely look at it in tandem along with this. So I would still appreciate if we could hold off on it.
Okay.
I was just going to say, I think I just see that sentence about foreign exchange students as modifying the first sentence, which says, observation of commencement is limited to those receiving these diplomas. However, we'll let you walk if you're, a foreign exchange student, and a little more of who's allowed to walk is what I see these, as opposed to the other one is who gets what diploma and who meets, the requirements for graduation. This is just saying who's allowed to walk, those who are getting these diplomas, and also. That's how I read this. So I'm fine with this the way it is. If we want to push it and observe in tandem, that's fine too. But I think this makes sense to me outside that modified diploma conversation, which we've taken care of.
May I ask one question, Miss Lady, as to Miss Marin's comments?
Yes.
The student that you described, will that student be allowed to walk with Madison during the commencement ceremony?
So I personally don't know. That wasn't the ask, but are we able to establish that answer by reading this policy? It seems so, because that student will complete the under A, requirements A. So that student has the choice to the base school or the special education center. So that student does have that and would, I guess, receive a diploma that just has a different name of the school, according to the policy.
Thank you. There just seems to be a lot of questions here. I say, for the sake of time, let's go ahead and push it until we can inquire a little bit more so we can be a little bit more productive with this policy. Thank you. That's it.
Ms. Marin?
Ms. Lady, I was wondering if we could just take a few minutes to talk about the next steps, because we are approaching the end of the year and our experiment in reviewing. So might we do that? Because I know we have some big ones on here, like rights and responsibilities of students. You know, we've got some real meaty ones. So,
Yeah.
and we've got our some facilities as well. So,
Well, the facilities, 8240 is going to be done and closed at the beginning of the next meeting, a closed governance meeting. And Janice will join us.
closed governance meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. And then I would like it, if possible, if there is not a lot of objection, because I do think we need to get through it, is if we could review policy 2611. I'm going to push the commencement one. We're going to table that for now. But there are a few edits that the clerks have suggested for this particular one. It is a policy that predominantly resides with us. But I do think because it lacks clarity in some areas, if we could get through that one. And let me just ask the question. I only have a few edits from the clerks, otherwise I am perfectly fine with how it's written. Ms. Sizemore-Heiser, did you come with copious edits of 2611?
No, I did not. This is not one of the ones we had. We had the AAP one.
No, I know, but this was on today's agenda.
Oh, yeah, no, I did not.
Okay.
I thought you meant in terms of.
No,
Yeah.
I just want to jump to it if I can. Dr. Anderson, did you have any, were you planning to offer some edits to this policy 2611, or were you fine with how it was put forward?
Just one overarching piece, and I'm going to go to that section, so bear with me. Maybe this is not the one. Give me 1 second while I find my bearing. I do believe I had one comment on this.
No.
This was discussed back in February. It's also been discussed previously under previous governance committees.
I think this third attempt at it provides the clarification that we needed. While Dr. Anderson, you're looking at that, and I don't see any other specifics, I'm gonna speak to the small amendments from the clerks. If you go to page 2, if you're in the paragraph that is under the clerk's address, the sentence that starts in the middle of the third line, the clerk of the school board shall record the date of receipt and provide copies of the written appeal to the members of the school board and the division, superintendent, or his or her designee. That's not actually the order that it happens. The clerks would like it to read, the clerk of the school board shall record the date of receipt, period. And then jump to the division superintendent or his or her designee, et cetera, all the way to the end. And then move to the end of that paragraph that the clerks will provide copies of the written appeal and all accompanying materials to the members of the school board and the division superintendent or his or her designee as the last step. Is that accurate, clerks?
Yes.
And all accompanying materials.
Ms. Lady, I had a point when you're ready.
Miss Lady, I'm sorry, I got this one confused with another one. I don't have any comments.
Thank you. Ms. Sizemore-Heiser?
You can finish if you want to first, or I'm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so that was one thing they wanted. And then the other was in the next paragraph, prior to the last sentence, because this is creating timeline. And the school board shall consider the written appeal and all written responses at the next regular business meeting or at such other time as is practicable if circumstances prevent a timely review, i.e. scheduling conflicts, school closures, or the need for translation services. So in front of the word "the," instead of "the school board shall issue a decision within 30 days," they'd like to add the word "ideally." The school board shall issue a decision within 30 days, because there are occasions where, because of inclement weather, because of translation. Yes, ma'am.
I'm fine with you continue. I just want to go back up to the prior
Okay.
amendment.
Okay. All right, let's pause and go back to the prior amendment. Dr. Reed?
We've had a bit of I think with transitions and so forth, I think it's important that my office receive this information as quickly as possible, because the recording the date of receipt, there's been a lot of discussion about what 4 days constitute. And if it's received at 5 o'clock, for example, former practice was that the first day would be the next day because staff wouldn't have had a chance to see it yet. And at times, I just think we could benefit from some more clarity around that. And so I know that it was sort of moved to last to come to our office, but that's where work has to happen very quickly on a 4-day turnaround. And so I just think at some point we need a little bit more clarity there.
I think some of that language is in here concerning the workday conversation about the 4 days and the 3 days. This is just the full finished packet and making sure that that was sent at the end of everything, if that makes sense. So the language here says work days defined as standard business days. And then if we scroll down, I did scroll too far down. Right here.
Show that whole paragraph.
That right there. So that paragraph there talks about that your administration position and then the 4 work days after receiving the appeal. So that clerk provides the copy of written appeal and all material. Maybe we could take out written appeal and just have all accompanying materials. I don't know, but that really speaks to like that final finished packet that we have that we send at the end.
I think one way, Ms. Brown, if you scroll up, that we can address Dr. Reed's concern is we could say the clerk of the school board shall record the date of receipt and provide a copy of the appeal to the superintendent, division superintendent, or his or her designee.
Miss Lady, may I add a question to that?
In a moment, let me see if, I want to make sure that this works for Dr. Reed. Because the way I understood it when I spoke with the clerks was the only thing you were delayed in doing was getting it to the school board, not to division council. I mean, not to the division superintendent, his or her designee. I mean, maybe the last sentence just should say to the school board. That's when we get it, but they need to get it ASAP.
Right, so they get it as soon as we process it, we give it to them, the 4-day workday starts. Yeah, so I think take that out at the end and actually put it earlier.
Can I just say, I'm not comfortable with making this up on the fly, and I will not vote for
Okay.
the changes. And I
Okay.
have some
All
other
right,
input.
we have only 5 minutes left, so because we can't get there, we will work, Ms. Eismer-Heiser.
Sorry, just, this is, I agree to take this back, but while they're taking it back, I had one separate comment on this. Mr. Foster, I know has come up before about a appeal on the written record versus a more formal appeal. I know it says here, the school board shall consider the written appeal and all written responses, but I'm wondering if we need more formal language about the school board shall hear the appeal on the written record, like in the way that mirrors how we've talked about it before, because I don't think this language mirrors how we've talked about it before, and I know this came up with a different policy with having to have clarity around written appeals versus hearings, and so I would just ask maybe that sentence that you can see at the bottom, the school board shall consider the written appeal and all written responses, perhaps if you could take another look at that to mirror that language that we did before, to make sure it's clear as to when we're taking an appeal on the written record, which is what I thought this would say, as opposed to a hearing appeal. So if I could ask for that as part of taking this back, just to get clarity on that. Thank you.
Miss Lady, may I share my question at this point?
Sure.
One of the things that I heard Dr. Reed talk about is if the document is received at 5 o'clock, and I don't know if it was answered, there were a lot of conversations, but if the document is received and stamped, let's say 5 o'clock, how are we accounting for the number of days? Is it to the hour? Because I think that's a real concern, because if it's Tuesday at 5 o'clock, Tuesday cannot count. So, Ms. Setlow, how is that being enumerated in your office in terms of days? What starts the clock?
Can I offer something quickly, and then we got to go on? Perhaps we can put in there that if received before noon, then that counts as a day. If received between noon and 5, the next day starts the 4-day clock. But we're tabling this for now because we need to talk about the path forward because we're about out of time.
Okay, and Ms. Setlow, you could just email me regarding current practice because I still like to know.
Will do.
Thank you.
Ms. Marin?
Yeah, it'd be good if we could give ourselves a breather at the end of these meetings to talk about the path forward. I just want to know, are we going to tackle the SR&R policy? We have a request to change a meeting date. I don't know what from. So could we just do a little bit of housekeeping to get really clear on what the agendas are? Because then we also don't have to wait until a week before to know exactly what we're doing. So I'd appreciate that.
Well, we can move something up, but the path forward has to been, what we didn't get to would be on the docket for next time.
But I disagree, because
Okay.
we keep barreling forward, and then like today, there are other 2000s policies that were relevant. The whole idea was to go through one set and do it to completion. And the student rights and responsibility one and the advanced or the academic placement one, those are huge. Those are going to take us months. We got to get input from committees.
I guess my question is, are they both out of compliance?
They're both, well, yes, I believe they are, and they are like one sentence. So can we perhaps either, it's something you're able to do before the next meeting, or, as I asked to do this 15 minutes ago, to do that here. What do we want to work on in May, June, and the half of July?
Well, if you're asking me my objectives, it's that we get through outdated policies without wordsmithing them to death, and then once we get caught up, we have time to really drill down on series. But you don't agree with that, so I want to listen to people.
The plan was to go series by series, and today...
Of what was outdated.
Okay, but we can't... Today, we were stopped in our tracks because we have a policy on commencement that is related to a policy on 2460, and I don't know if 2460 is outdated or not, but now it's incomplete. And so we're racking up all of these half reviews. That last policy was 2019, so it is out of compliance. So I don't know. I thought the goal was to look at a whole set of policies at a time, and we seem to be expanding that.
All right, well, I will work with folks to determine what we are all comfortable with the next agenda. Yes, the next meeting, I believe, has been changed from the 13th to the 19th. It is now on Monday, May 19, and that's because we would not have quorum in person on the 13th.
Miss Lady, we're still figuring out if we're going to have quorum on the 19th.
Okay,
Well, I am available if you're waiting for me, and I'd much rather get the notice like this than hearing it, a day or hours before, so thank you for doing it in advance.
does that give us quorum?
That, right now, it would be Miss Marion and you. Miss Sizemore-Heiser is not available, so it depends on whether Dr. Anderson's available or whether Miss Dixit's available
I
in
have a
person.
medical appointment.
Not available, I'm sorry. I didn't respond yet, but I'll respond here.
You are available, thank you. And hopefully Miss
I'm sorry,
Dixit.
I am not.
Oh,
I
you're
am
not available? Okay, then we'll have to check with Ms. Dixit, so more to come on that. Yes, I hear what folks are saying. I'm doing the best I can do. I will again reiterate, I'm very adamantly opposed to someone chairing something they never served on before, because there's people who know more than I do, and I'm learning the best I can. So I will be receptive to that. Let's chat. We'll try to put together an agenda that makes sense for everybody, and that allows us to be productive. So at this point, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all.